grateful.
No,
No,
I'm
maybe.
joking. No, I think we can start, and then if more people join, they will join, right? They will see that we're here and they can jump in.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Today, besides the normal 4 points of the conflict management working group, I designed 3 questions that I want like each one of us to try to develop a little bit. And it's in the Gravity working group manifesto, so I will share the link in the Discord.
Do you mind to share the document on your screen so it's easier to record? Since you are sharing.
I didn't understand.
Yeah, I'm saying like since you are sharing your screen, it's good if you just show the document so it's easier for me to record and don't start to tap around.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So the first point is like, do you think conflict management should be done with or without a group of people designated to hold accountable for it? Like in the fourth Ostrom principle, she says monitors should be accountable of the appropriators to the appropriators, or are the appropriators themselves? So we should, like, until this point, we have been talking about making a designated group of people responsible for it. But there's been like others that I would like us to consider, like, to have this shared capacity of conflict management between all members. What do you think about this? Okay.
It wasn't clear the question because it sounds like a bit a robot like in the middle, so I don't know if someone catch it. And
It's also written in the chat if you wanna look at it. In the DC Gravity chat.
You mean the first question?
Yeah, that was what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's possible to make it like without humans, because I have no idea how it should be done. But if it's possible, it's something we should look forward to do that. But I think it's also good to. I mean, I really have no idea how like a non-human would work. But if that's a good system, I think we could combine both of them, and to be more accurate on the decisions of the conflict.
I think it's interesting to have a group that is designated specifically to solve conflict, and to have the community supportive of it somehow. Like
Yeah.
the conflict we had recently, for example. Both Jeff and Tamara, that were not directly involved with it, because they knew somehow what was the situation, they wanted to jump in. So I think it strengthens the it strengthens the relationship somehow, for you to know that like more people are involved in something with you, and that there is this shared understanding of what's happening. But I think it's important to have like one group that has the time and expertise to like jump in one thing specifically.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that maybe a specific group to handle everything that happens if there are conflicts or something that needs to be solved, like us right now. We are the Gravity TC group, and we are currently trying to implement something that is worth and that will solve these issues. But in the sense of having someone responsible of a certain conflict or a group of someones that will be responsible of them, I think that should be dependent or maybe uh, usually changing, because I don't believe that it should be the same people every time. So we could think about periods of time where you are, I don't know what the name would be, if it's a steward or would be a conflict resolute manager, or I'm not sure what the term is, but those, I think that shouldn't be a role of forever, of a long time. It should be something that keeps rotating and keeps changing, because I don't know. It's kind of a sense of juror, and the jurors in usual judgment aren't always the same people, and that can get some trouble in the long term. So maybe a group that is like having the whole knowledge of the Gravity TC group, and that is able to handle a better logistic in that aspect. But the people that will be putting the effort to solve the issues when it's needed need to be something that is real changing. Uh, Usually, it cannot be the same people ever. That's what I want to say.
I like to add, like sometimes when
My
I mean,
approach to
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead,
that
Zaki.
my approach to this. Sorry. Well, I'm going to talk. Sorry, I think it's because there's a lot of delay that I'm having these issues. Really sorry. But what I want to say about this is that I think there are conflicts that they are better handled when they are private. So that's why I think there should be a group of people that first like handles the first input, and then if needed, then there can be a more public approach. But I think that if we let everyone like be a conflict manager or to have that capabilities, maybe like it could be a little bit of there could be some trouble also on the boundaries and on the like yeah and on the capabilities of the conflict manager. And also it could like not help to the main goal, that is to have an strategic management of conflict, and like to not go public with everything, but to handle issues, small issues, the most private and direct way we can between stakeholders.
Hi, Durga.
Hi,
Thanks for joining.
I have a question about this process. Just let me know when it's okay to ask that.
I would love to hear what you think about the first question, Durga.
The first question being that we're talking about defining clear group boundaries.
You're muted, Juan.
You're muted, Juan. Yes. The first question is if you think that there should be a group of people to hold accountable and to be responsible of conflict management inside the organization, or if you think that this is a capability that should be shared between all members.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that there may be people who have an interest and a skill set around conflict management. So, for example, myself, I've run and participated in a lot of nonviolent communication groups. And so somebody like me who might have time might be helpful in facilitating some kind of conflict resolution. I also know somebody who's trained at the Marshall Rosenberg Nonviolent Communication Group who might be enlisted for really thorny issues of this nature. On the other hand, I do believe that if you're going to participate in a group like this, there might be some basic practical skills that should be learned by people, or at least agreed to before they go to participate in a conflict resolution situation. That would actually be clear and specific than the stuff that we're seeing just in Ostrom's side of the picture. Because nonviolent communication, for example, goes quite a lot more detail about how to actually achieve these boundaries and rules and this kind of thing, and will assist in making those kinds of determinations in a clear and practical manner versus just having these really quite broad approaches to a given situation.
Okay. I think it's very interesting what we have all said, and I agree that there's some skill set that is needed for this role, and that if a person is not trained on conflict management and maybe would like to try to help on a conflict, they could even like make it worse. That's something even skillful conflict management can do. So it's like we have to have the most professional and most competent group of people like and to be doing this.
And I would say that it goes further in the sense that rather than these really broad outlines of Ostrom's general things, that we have sort of a second layer of agreed principles, like, for example, Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication principles that we all kind of agree to as a shared language. So there's a lot of talk in this group about developing shared languages in different contexts, and I think it's just as important to do that with conflict management as it is in every other situation.
Hey guys, hello everyone. I hear some echo. I don't know if you hear it too
It's me.
or
It's
not.
me. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to connect again this. I'm really sorry.
It's okay. If there is no solution, it's okay. Not a big deal.
I think it's good, like, just mute yourself when you're not talking and then just unmute when you want to talk.
Push to talk is my friend.
Okay. Can you hear me right now? Okay, I'm gonna work with this. So let's jump into the second question. And it's really interesting what we're all talking about. And the second question is, what would be the boundary of this internal management layer that is proposed? Can we have support and legitimacy in both the tech and the broader TE space, or will it be seen as a state intervention? So my first approach on this is that even in the centralized organizations, there should be like some type of order, and that type of order shouldn't be seen as a state intervention, but it should be seen like a peer way of like having some like common rules, and like to set that common languages, and to set yes, an environment of behavior. So I think initially that we could strive for a broader support and legitimacy, but for that it's very hard because the if we have a closed group of people who are the conflict managers, maybe there are people that could be involved in a conflict that don't feel represented by them, or that they feel that the conflict managers are like a group without legitimacy for them.
In my opinion, it's like it depends like how the conflict is evolving. Like for example, like if someone is spamming on the chat, maybe we can have just about banning him for a period of time. But if the conflict keeps climbing, then maybe the next step would be try to mediate and resolve the conflict by ourselves, but somehow. And if it keeps scaling, then maybe we should do the state in that, like the state. I don't know the word right now, but that thing.
I think it's really important for everyone to be in agreement that there is a code of conduct and that there is a process in case that code of conduct is not acted on. So maybe this agreement is like a window that pops up, and for you to be active in the channels, you need to agree with that. Or like, I think that's something to think about, like how to make sure people have at least very easy access to what is the process before they engage with the community.
Yeah, and links to the shared languages and the principles. So maybe Ostrom's principles are at the top, and then the specifics, whatever that shared language is, be it NVC or other things that we would employ, and you would want them to be kind of public methodologies that are well known and so on, so that people could also, if they're in conflict, they can say, okay, what is the process I'm going to go through, and what is it that I need to learn about this process so that I can respectfully, do things. So like in NVC, for example, there is actually a way to make a request, and to be able to recognize a request versus a demand is a very important part of that process, right? And so I think a lot of times it'll feel like a state intervention if, for example, a lot of people are saying a request in such a way that it sounds like a demand. So then it could feel like a big, a huge thing too. So to kind of give this shared language some public voice, and have everybody kind of understand that it's a protocol that we follow and understand how to break those things down so that it's clear for everybody. And people who would want to review it could attend like a gravity primer to say, this is how we go through conflicts. This is how we would manage a certain thing. We could even do a role playing where we would say, in a given situation, it would be like this or that. And then if there are things that are coming up, then people can proactively figure out what's going on and figure out how to structure their own requests and feelings and needs and observations that they're making about behavior.
I think that NVC is a really good point in terms of like people being familiar somehow with this tool already, because there is a lot of people that is already familiar with it. So it could be like a step that it's already walked. Maybe there's a lot of people in the community that already participated in NVC workshops or trainings, and maybe starting to identify that is already like a common language, like Durga said. I think that's an important point.
Plus, he's actually done a ton of YouTube videos and things that we could link to about the approach and and he examines the entire thing. So the whole thing is 4 parts: observations, feelings, needs, and requests, and each of those has their own set of competencies inside of it. And he is in YouTube videos giving workshops about exactly this stuff. So, you could say, here's a section on observations, here's a section on what feelings are, and there are very good feelings and needs wheels, graphics that you can get online. So that might be very helpful.
Okay. Um, yeah, I totally agree with Durgadas in this, because I think like if if we get to a community and we say, hey, these are the rules, it may sound like we are like trying to impose our point of view, and this is not the idea. The idea is to say, hey, the community is organizing, so like these are the boundaries that and these are the processes and the protocols we are trying to propose for managing our human relationships. So I think that it's very important to communicate this, and to not have like a rush approach on like to try to implement the things. But first, we have to try to strive for the consent of the community and for the knowledge of the people of what are we talking about, because maybe people still like hear graduate sanctions, and maybe they think that we are going to like punish or something. And but when you like read and understand what we have been talking about what are the graduate sanctions, you understand that they're really pedagogical, and they are really like soft, and they are like for the minimum response for a conflict situation, and with a very alternative dispute resolution scope on the approach of how we handle the issues. So I think it's very important to have to make this like a more public issue.
I think it's not bad. I think it's really important to have rules. Like, rules are not bad. I think but the important thing to make it clear and for everyone to understand is that we as a community, we have the agency to change the rules in which we are agreeing to. So I think it's important to have rules and to know that there is a process to change them if we see that they are not important anymore, that they are not applying in the best way. Maybe some rules are generating conflicts, and then having a body to take care of those conflicts would help to understand that the root of those conflicts are rules, and then maybe that would be like a feedback loop that would help us understand how the rules need to change, and have a collective, a participatory decision making process for it. But I think it's important that they are there, and that the sanctions are there, and that there is some, that there is a process for it.
Yeah, I once heard one of my teachers say, the moment you start taking offense at the rules, try to think of them as guidelines. And the moment you think of them too much as guidelines, then maybe it's best that you think of them as rules. And so it's an interesting sort of paradox there, because it has to do with how you feel about it much more than it does the actual sort of things themselves.
Yeah, I like that approach of taking rules as a guideline, because yeah, it's amazing. Like, and also when you join a community,
I really like that slogan. So
Go ahead, Zep.
yeah, I was saying what Tula says. It's amazing because when you take the rules as a guideline, when you are new, you see the rules, and it helps you to, you at least if there is no rules, you might do something like it's wrong, but because for the sake you don't know. But if there is a guideline, like, oh, that's an amazing word. It helps people when they are coming. I think that's very cool.
And it's actually the tension between those two, I think, that provides structure to people, and depends on where you're coming from. So if I'm coming from a thing where I need to be grounded and I need to know what the rules are so I don't feel like I'm making mistakes or going the wrong direction, then it's better for me to feel like there's rules. But if I'm feeling expansive and I'm contributing to the space a lot and everything, and I might be feeling my boundaries a little bit, maybe maybe I need to feel like those things are more like guidelines so that I can continue to feel creative and otherwise engaged, right? So this can work in multiple contexts.
okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, this is I would like to jump to the third question, and this is a question that has like really been posed since the beginning of the conflict management group, and I would like us to review today too, because like for me, conflict management is a very human like procedure. For me, it's very difficult to try to put logic into conflict and to say like, hey, this is our the way we measure conflicts in our organization with uh, with a mathematical variable. For me, that's very complex. But as this is a token engineering community, I would like token engineers and people to like help to make this smarter. Because in the issues, I heard I read a proposition like making a damping loop, and making a measurement, a logic measurement of conflict. So for me, that's a very a issue where I fell short. So I would like to develop more on like hearing on your points of view.
Well, it's I think an interesting question, because if you have a really big issue with something, let's say you have a really big conflict with something, but it's successfully resolved, that can actually build an enormous amount of trust in the group and the facilitator and in the and all of that too, right? So to simply take conflict as its own measurement is one thing, but then to also try to make sure that we as a group are successfully resolving those things, and that we have a suite of tools that would meet all of the different needs of people. So for me, for example, I'm on the autism spectrum, so what I actually need is a constant proactive reminder about how to best operate in groups. And so I actually, at my job, I actually talk to my human resources department on a consistent basis so that I can make sure that I'm making sure that I know where boundaries and things are, because I'm often oversharing and don't always recognize social boundaries. So I actually, it's really important for me to sort of proactively have a conflict resolution person I can go to in some way to make sure I'm reminded all the time about those things. And in many ways, it just makes the whole thing much more explicit, which is why I would appreciate a whole bunch of proactive structure in place, for example. And proactive structure in place, I think, helps not only autistic people, but organizations. So it's better to be explicit than implicit in many ways. And so as long as you're not so explicit that it starts to feel like oppressive upon people.
For me, at least, I can tell that whenever I have a conflict, for a while it feels bad, but then the moment I accept that it will happen and it will continue to happen, and it is something that happens, yeah, it's a really big relief. So yeah, mostly if this group is going to be handling like conflicts, I think the one of the first steps maybe would be to slow things down and, I don't know, make people feel that it's okay and that it happens and it has happened, in order to be able to see properly.
I really like the idea of like a mathematic resolution. I mean, not like it's a verdict, like it have like the say, but it's good to have. And I mean, I have no idea how that would work, but if so people is saying that's possible, I think that's interesting to look and see how it would work. And yeah, but always keeping, I think like conflict are like as you are, all guys are saying, it's very human. So I think like the last decision should be based on humans. And I was thinking also two ideas, like something like I don't know if that's implemented on One Hive, but I think I hear somewhere around like for example in Celeste, when you want to participate as a juror, it depends on, it's like aleatory, is that random, it's a random choice, and depends on the tokens you have, like you have more or less possibilities to be juror on a specific conflict, but then on the next conflict it's random again and random again. And another thing I was thinking is it's yeah, I mean it can have some issues, because it's like incentivize community to give their feedback on any on conflicts we want to drive to the community, but we should be careful, like as Manuel says, something related on that, like maybe community is just voting for the sake of the reward on the conflict, and that's something we should avoid. And I just come to my head, we could avoid that if we only incentivize the people for example, if there is a conflict and there is like many options it can happen, but when like the correct answer and the people who vote on the correct answer is like the people who got the reward or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
I'd like to make a suggestion to the group. There's a wonderful book by a man named Alfie Kohn, Alfie Kohn, called Punished by Rewards. And I think it's an incredibly important scholarly work. It's also quite funny and well written, but it is actually a treatise on how incentivized systems create punishments fundamentally in some way. And so it's if you have any incentivized system at all, you're going to always have kind of this reward punishment duality, which is inevitably going to create conflicts. So it's incredibly important to know how to work within these kinds of things, and especially since we're talking about money, the incentives tend to be quite large in many cases, and so I would just like to point you guys to that. So it could be that you could figure out some underlying potential problems that can exist in this incentivized system so that we can perhaps guard against those things and take those things into account.
Motivation and how to get closer to that, how to build a culture that you feel intrinsically motivated to be in, and you're not there just because you're going to receive some type of reward. And I think it's been somehow like an interesting experiment with the calls that we've been having and the warmth of the culture and the working groups. And it feels like there is something else than just the incentives, hence that they are so abstract right now. It's not like anything that has value yet. And I think that's good to keep in mind for the future of the process, for sure. Of like how are these people going to be rewarded from, like how does the gravity people will receive the rewards? It's probably going to fall into the reward system that we have, and that is another discussion with the source cred also, and it goes on. I'll not get into that right now, but it's interesting to think about. Thanks for bringing up.
Related with you just said, we could also make like but rewards not on money but on reputation. Like when you have good reputation, you can keep doing more and more, because I mean, if you have reputation, it's because you care.
Okay.
Sorry,
For my initial point of view, continue. I will speak after.
Oh, I was just going to say, in some ways, we also need to not only reward, but I mean, the thing is that oftentimes what we're talking about in punishments and rewards tends to ignore the other kinds of wealth that exist, and it's incredibly important to make sure that we see validation is and that's kind of why I like the NVC thing a little bit, is because when I read Ostrom's stuff, um, each one is a combination, a convoluted combination of feelings and needs. So a lot of times conflicts arise from you need to know whether the conflict is arising from an unmet need or just the way a person feels. And if the way a person feels is connected to an unmet need that affects the entire group, that might be an incredibly important troubleshooting thing to figure out, not only from a project standpoint, and each, because we are all doing many different kinds of projects, so it's incredibly important to be able to understand that you can have a person say an unpopular thing that addresses an incredibly intrinsic need for the group. At the same time, you can have a person who's having a conflict with another person who's having a personal unrelated need, or they can have a conflict that arises because they feel that a need of the group won't be met if this situation. So it's all incredibly. So when I look at Ostrom's stuff, it's a little bit more complicated to understand her principles than it is to understand the principles of NVC, and it might be interesting to understand to actually link the two to try to make sure that we understand or maybe even improve upon those particular sets of skills by having them be much more precisely written.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, and sometimes, like, the resolution of a conflict is not an like an answer or like a product of an agreement. Of sometimes a conflict just manages when you talk with the person. And as Tonga said, sometimes we are in a conflict, and maybe in our minds we make conflict really big. And sometimes we just need people to like say like, hey, we are here for you, don't worry, or like yeah, to have someone to talk to, because that's I think that's key here, to have a really good communication, because all conflicts start really small, but they start scaling if not issued properly. So I think that the scope of this conflict management group shouldn't be just to like handle the conflicts when they arise, but like also to try to prevent them, having a transparent communication, like uh, trying to materialize the values of our organization into into a way of making everyone feel safe in the organization to express their point of view, even though it's not popular, and to make people to be able to talk openly about conflict, and that there can be a solution or a management to the issue that bothers them. I think that's also like a thing that we should like try to promote this feeling of security in the organization, so that the people like have reliance on the conflict management group. Because on the other side, that could lead to the feeling of like, yeah, this is the state intervention, and like they want people who is close to them to talk, but they don't want people who represent other points of view to talk. So we need to like to give visibility even to minorities, and even to people who think different, and to not be scared of yeah of having a discussion between different points of view, and but to try to make the discussions go into the terms of academic principles, and in terms of a controlled environment, and not letting discussions like go personal, because maybe there are 2 points of view that they are equally valid, but the issue then turns personal, and you simplify the issue, or you like take away the importance of the issue, because you say, no, it's just her talking, it's just him talking. And we shouldn't make people in the organization feel that when they talk they are not heard. That's a very important thing, that I think that the conflict managers should be always like reviewing, seeing all the chats we have in the community, and having like a clear scope of what is happening, so like they can make people to see that they are watching and they are seeing what is happening, and that even that an unpopular opinion is expressed, that the conflict managers like promote it, even though just even though like it's controversial, but they promote it just for people like feeling important. And yeah, I expressed what I was trying to say, and is to make people feel important on what they say, even though it's unpopular, even though it's yeah, it even that's what I want to say.
Yes, I agree completely, and like that same thing, that having someone maybe to not agree but to let you finish talk and until the end, because so many times happens that one person is talking and the other person is more focused on what is going to answer than in hearing, or maybe they don't have time sometimes to process or to understand what the other person is saying. So that just means that the person is not the appropriate for the situation. I agree completely that like anxiety or fear or all the negative emotions go away really fast when someone just listens. And like whenever I used to go to a psychologist, and yeah, I knew that he was like just hearing, but it was really helpful, and just that feeling to be heard.
Juan, do you see any?
Does anyone
Do you
have
think?
something else to say?
I was just gonna ask if you think there's something we can help with, if there's something we can work on that needs, yeah, anything that needs attention, any process that we need to develop.
I think we can start diving into a way to
I think
sorry, Juan, to design the layers of what can be automated in regards of what's gonna be a reputation assignment besides the price, and what's going to be a punishment of sorts if you act wrongly, because there may be a way that we can automate, but most of the conflict resolution that will happen will need a human interaction and human direction. So maybe of all of the designs that we have made of the scales of how uh, problematic a conflict may be, we can also make a design on what can help us a good reputation or bad reputation. And with all of these tools, we may be able to automate some of it. And that I'm interested in helping from the techie side, from the development side. So I'm interested to see what we can do with all of that. But that needs a design that can handle the layers of what can be code of conduct, what can be a dispute resolution where that is not so complex, and what is needed to to solve a complex dispute, for example.
Well, I have to say, from my perspective, a lot of uh, the reason why I'm in this group at all, and the reason why I continue to feel like I can participate, is because of how it's met my need for being seen and heard. I don't know anything about cryptocurrency and anything at all. I'm really just learning about it, and I started working with a gentleman named Sean, and I thought, geez, I should probably learn about this. And so I came into this group, and I was accepted, and a lot of people sort of validated my perspective, and that validation is incredibly important as a way to prevent needs from happening in the future and to get people to invest in a certain way, just like I'm doing now, like by participating. And I'm only saying it in that way because the structure of the organization itself, the way you guys are, even the fact that you're doing a cultural build first before the mountain of reward starts flooding in and distorting everybody's entire idea about what we're here to do, right? There's a lot of really important structural things that you guys are already doing right, just in that sense. And it would be, I think, a good idea to just inventory what are all the different ways in which we can sort of structurally prevent conflict from occurring before the big flood of rewards comes in, and to really do our best to not think in terms of punishments and rewards at all. I think if you just read that one book, you'll probably for the rest of your life never want to be in a reward punishment situation ever again, and you'll be fundamentally suspicious of all reward and punishment situations, um, and will actively seek to sort of subvert those systems wherever you can. And I'm just bringing it all up just because I think it's such a beautiful community you guys have built, but it's really easy to do that when there are no stakes. And so when the stakes go up, then things get dicey at that time.
I really like what Durgadas was saying, that the punishment, but that they are not everything, and that we should inventory ways to structurally address conflict before it even like becomes visible to the community. I think a way to do that is make everyone feel safe, feel everyone feel validated, to make everyone feel important, feel everyone feel confident to talk and to invest time and effort and thoughts into this community. And that is something that is very related to the cultural soft governance. And that's why this is a group that was born from soft governance. So I really like that we are getting into an issue where solving conflict is not addressing only conflict situations, but solving conflict is also making people feel good in the organization. And on the other side, what Livia said, like, how can we help in this moment? I think that in this moment, it would be really good to have like a presentation, like a public presentation of what is what we are talking about when we say conflict management, so that we leave all misinterpretation aside, and like that we can get that what we want, that is more people to be involved in these conversations, in this and in this group that is very related. And in that way we can also have like first people interest in participating, and that could help to have the first group of people with the skill sets and with interest help in the conflicts and in the relationships of organizations.
Maybe you can think about something like that for the lab session that you have, that it will be after. So tomorrow we'll have Shen, and then after, maybe it could be some type of a presentation of like what is conflict management from the TEC perspective, and what are the directions we're going, how can people collaborate, like have a full presentation of the whole idea behind it.
That's great, Livia. Thank you. I will work on that. And as we are arriving to time, thank you, Juan, for jumping into the call. And if you want to say something before we leave the call, please. I would really like to hear.
I've started uploading some resources that I've used when I ran the NVC group in the past. And I'll put in some links to all of the things that I've talked about so far today, plus another book that I know of that speaks to this. And then perhaps we can, try to make decisions around some of this stuff. Um, and it's also interesting to me that it would be interesting to just learn what was the underlying process behind, for example, choosing Ostrom's stuff, as a guiding principle, because it could be that, you know, as I say, I when I look at that, I see a pretty large lack of precision in certain sense, and something that's a lot more oriented on large groups as opposed to, preventing conflict at a more granular level. So, we also need strategies around resolving those conflicts at a more granular human level versus the needs of the organization as a whole. And it's great to do all this stuff when there are no stakes, and to really think about it, then what would it be like if suddenly we gave people $1 billion to play with, and what would or would we still adhere to these things at that time too, right? So
I have to jump in another call, but just to quickly answer that question, why Ostrom is because from our knowledge, she has the most comprehensive literature in terms of how to govern common pool resources and the commons in general. And it addresses a lot of the challenges that we've been facing in decentralized communities, like the tragedy of the commons, prisoner's dilemma, and some of the core problems of like why are we not being able to organize ourselves in a way that is beneficial for the collective good. So that's why it's been interesting to look into her work and to follow the principles in a way that we build this culture, thinking about the resilience of the commons in the future. So it's not only for the conflict management, but for all the other points. So for sure, there are specific points that we can combine with other thought leaders and bring more knowledge into making them then happen in the best way possible.
yeah, I apologize that Ostrom's work is really new to me, so I'm just trying to contextualize it into the place where I know. So thank you.
Muchas gracias a todos.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Gracias.